I'd like to introduce you to Puabi of Ur. I talked a little bit about her in my last video on the She Who Wrote exhibit at the Morgan Library, where I saw her outfit, but I saw some more artifacts attributed to her at the Penn Museum last week, so I wanted to make a video just on Puabi today. Puabi is really interesting for a lot of different reasons, but one thing about her is that the only textual attestation that we have of her is this cylinder seal with her name on it. And usually this is on display in the British Museum, but it was on display as part of the She Who Wrote exhibit at the Morgan Library that I saw in January too, so I saw it in person. Puabi is interpreted to be this seated figure here, and you can see in her hair she has sort of the setup that we saw reconstructed in the outfit in the previous picture that I showed. And her name is here. And here is how you write Puabi's name in cuneiform. And actually, Puabi's name has been subject to debate since the excavation of this seal in 1928. Leonard Woolley originally thought her name was Shub-Ad, with the first sign being Shub-3 and the second sign Ad. But it turns out that Shub-3 doesn't really show up in Sumerian very much, and it doesn't mean anything. So now instead of reading her name as Sumerian, we read it as Akkadian, and the first sign is Pu-3, which is the Akkadian word for mouth or word. The second word is still Ad, which is the Sumerian word for father, but instead we read it as the Akkadian word for father, Abum. And scholars interpret her name to be a genitive construction, meaning word of my father, so we convert that to Puabi, with the first person genitive suffix at the end of Abu. And then the last sign is Puabi's title, Nin or Eresh, lady or queen. Puabi's outfit and most of the stuff excavated from her tomb is usually on display at the Penn Museum, but as I said, her outfit was on display at the Morgan Library in New York, and I guess it's in transit now, so instead of Puabi's outfit, they currently have on display one of her attendants' outfits, which is similar. Around the base of the mannequin, they have some smaller jewelry items like rings, beads, and a necklace, and then impressions of the cylinder seals that were found in Puabi's tomb, the one with her name on it, and then another one with her on it. And then some more beads, an amulet, and some hairpins. Here is the other cylinder seal that is thought to have Puabi on it, here, and her name's not on this one. And then this cylinder seal was not found in Puabi's tomb, but found in the so-called Great Death Pit. It shows a similar banquet scene with people hanging out, and I wanted to point out this thing here. Puabi was buried with a lot of different fancy vessels for serving a banquet, but those long things are actually big long bendy straws to drink beer from that container. And then over here are some more luxury items. My favorite is this cosmetic container with a lion eating a deer, and this shell-shaped one, and then a bull head, maybe for another bull lyre. And then on the other side of the room, there was more of Puabi's jewelry, some earrings up top, some necklaces, some diadems, and then my favorite, a little bull pin that's so tiny. And then finally, there are these diadems, which are like crown things, or maybe they were necklaces. And this was a cool little part of the exhibit because they talked about a few of the differing reconstructions that have been proposed for what these would have looked like if they were worn by a person. And this is the current reconstruction. And the little beads are so cute. There's little bulls, and there's little deer and little plants, and it's great. And finally, I want to talk about Puabi's tomb itself. Content warning, I'm going to talk about some gnarly deaths for the rest of this video, so if you don't want to hear about it, skip this part. So this is Tomb 800 of the Royal Cemetery of Ur, and Puabi herself is actually buried up here in this stone-lined portion of the tomb, and this is actually sunken down a little bit below the rest of this. And then there's an entrance ramp over here, and then the skeletons of 5 people who are estimated to be males, and they all have bronze daggers with them, so they're interpreted to be maybe guards for Puabi's afterlife. And then there are a few other bodies around here, you can't really see them in the drawing, and then a chest maybe for storing textiles, and a chariot. And then down here are 10 more skeletons who are estimated to be female, and there is a harp, and this is where one of the bull lyres was found as well, the Queen's lyre that's at the British Museum that I talked about before. So it seems that Puabi herself died of natural causes at some point, but the rest of the people who are buried in this tomb did not die of natural causes. We don't have any texts that explain exactly what was going on here, but it's often interpreted that the rest of the people who are buried with Puabi are supposed to be attendants to take care of her in her afterlife. When the tomb was first excavated in the 20s, the archaeologists assumed that the rest of the people who were killed and buried in this tomb with Puabi were poisoned, but upon further skeletal analysis, it seemed that they were whacked in the back of the head. No matter what's going on in this tomb, it's very clear that Puabi had a lot of power. There's no evidence that these people were violently killed, so they probably weren't coerced into dying for Puabi, but they voluntarily did so to show their support of her. And another thing about Puabi's power in relation to the cylinder seal with her name on it, it just has her name on it. It's not her name in relation to her husband, the king. It's just her. There have been interpretations, like Julian Reed has argued that she was the wife of Mesopotamian, who was a king of Ur, but we don't have any direct evidence for this, so it seems that whatever power she had, she held by herself. There's another burial nearby that's interpreted to be the king's burial, but we don't really know much about who that guy is and if he had any relation to Puabi, or what the whole deal was in organizing this big burial. Any way you slice it, it's a really impressive feat of an early state and perhaps an individual ruler like Puabi.